Just the place for a Snark, the bellman cried as he landed his crew with care, supporting each man on the top of the tide by a finger entwined in his hair. Just the place for a Snark. I have said it twice. That alone should encourage the crew. Just the place for a Snark. I said it thrice. What I tell you 3 times is true. The crew was complete. It included the boots, a maker of bonnets and hoods, a barrister brought to arrange their disputes, and a broker to value their goods. There was also a beaver that paced on the deck or would sit making lace in the bow, and it often the bellman said saved them from wreck, though none of the sailors knew how. There was one who was famed for the number of things he forgot when he entered the ship. His umbrella, his watch, all his jewels and rings, and the clothes he had bought for the trip. He had 42 boxes all carefully packed with his name clearly painted on each. But since he omitted to mention the fact, they were all left behind on the beach. The loss of his clothes hardly mattered because he had 7 coats on when he came, with 3 pairs of boots, but the worst of it was he had wholly forgotten his name. He would answer to hi or to any loud cry, such as fry me or fritter my wig, to what you may call him or what was his name, but especially thingamajig. He came as a baker, but owned when too late, and it drove the poor bellman half mad. He could only bake bride cake, for which I may state, no materials were to be had. The last of the crew needs a special remark, though he looked an incredible dunce. He had just one idea, but that one being... Snark! The good bellman engaged him at once. He came as a butcher, but gravely declared when the ship had been sailing a week, he could only kill beavers. The bellman looked scared and was almost too frightened to speak. But at length he explained in a tremulous tone there was only one beaver on board, and that was a tame one he had of his own, whose death would be deeply deplored. The bellman himself, they all praised to the skies. Such courage, such ease, and such grace. Such solemnity, too. One could see he was wise the moment one looked in his face. He had brought a large map representing the sea without the least vestige of land, and the crew were much pleased when they found it to be a map they could all understand.
Other maps have such shapes.
With their islands and capes.
But we've got our brave captain to thank, so the crew would protest that he's brought us the best, a perfect and absolute blank. But the principal failing occurred in the sailing, and the bellman, perplexed and distressed, said he had hoped at least, when the wind blew due east, that the ship would not travel due west. But the danger was past. They had landed at last, with their boxes, portmanteaus, and bags. Yet at first sight, the crew were not pleased with the view, which consisted of chasms and crags. Come, listen, my men, while I tell you again the 5 unmistakable marks by which you may know wheresoever you go the warranted genuine snarks. For although common snarks do no manner of harm, yet I feel it my duty to say, some are boojums. The bellman broke off in alarm, for the baker had fainted away. They roused him with muffins, they roused him with ice, they roused him with mustard and cress. They roused him with jam and judicious advice, they set him conundrums to guess. When at length he sat up and was able to speak, his sad story he offered to tell, and the bellman cried, "Silence! Not even a shriek!" and excitedly tingled his bell. A dear uncle of mine, after whom I am named, remarked when I bade him farewell, "Oh, skip your dear uncle!" the bellman exclaimed as he angrily tingled his bell. He remarked to me then, said this mildest of men, "If your snark be a snark, that is right. Fetch it home by all means. You may serve it with greens, and it's handy for striking a light. But oh, beamish nephew, beware of the day if your snark be a boojum, for then you will softly and suddenly vanish away and never be met with again." It is this that oppresses my soul when I think of my uncle's last words. And my heart is like nothing so much as a bowl brimming over with quivering curds. I engage with a snark every night after dark, in a dreamy, delirious fight. I serve it with dreams in those shadowy scenes, and I use it for striking a light. But if ever I meet with a boojum, that day, in a moment, of this I'm sure, I shall softly and suddenly vanish away, and the notion I cannot endure. They sought it with thimbles, they sought it with care. They pursued it with forks and hope. They threatened this life with a railway share. They charmed it with smiles and soap. They sought it with thimbles, they sought it with care. They pursued it with forks and hope. They threatened its life with a railway share. They charmed it with smiles and soap. Then the butcher contrived an ingenious plan for making a separate sally. And he fixed on a spot unfrequented by man, a dismal and desolate valley. But the very same plan to the beaver occurred. It had chosen the very same place. Yet neither betrayed by a sign or word the disgust that appeared in his face. But the valley grew narrow and narrower still, and the evening got darker and colder, till merely from nervousness and not from goodwill, they marched along shoulder to shoulder. Then a scream, shrill and high, rent the shuddering sky, and they knew that some danger was near. The beaver turned pale to the tip of his tail, and even the butcher felt queer. They returned hand in hand, and the bellman, unmanned for a moment with noble emotion, said, "This amply repays all the wearisome days we've spent on the billowy ocean." Such friends as the beaver and butcher became have seldom, if ever, been known. In winter or summer, it was always the same. You could never meet either alone.
Plaintiff, sheriff, defendant, so help you God. All right. And nothing but the truth. All so swear.
They sought it with thimbles, they sought it with care, they pursued it with forks and hope. They threatened its life with a railway share, they charmed it with smiles and soap. shouting, the bellman said. He is shouting like mad, only hark! He is waving his hands, he is wagging his head. He has certainly found a Snark! It's a Snark! Was the sound that first came to their ears, and it seemed almost too good to be true. Then followed a torrent of laughter and cheers, then the ominous words, "It's a boo." Then silence. Some fancied they heard in the air a weary and wandering sigh that seemed like choo. But the others declare it was only a breeze that went by. In the midst of the word he was trying to say, in the midst of his laughter and glee, he had softly and suddenly vanished away. For the Snark was a Boojum, you see.